title of my talk tonight is The Heart of Sorrow, the Seeds of Compassion, and the Overflowing Cup. And so this is a theme that's been kind of resonating for me as of late. And I also want to touch in on, I've been thinking about the warrior spirit. We have this idea of the warrior spirit, warrior's heart, in this practice, and how it is that we come to engage, how it is that we come to turn toward being with ourselves, being with our myriad of experience as humans. And so I just want to touch on the fact that rainbow people are family. All of us here, rainbow folk. This sense of warriorship, this sense of engaging that warrior's heart. Already engaged. This is our work in the world. And I think just by walking in our feet, in our authenticity, we've had to open to that warrior spirit. Some of us have had to suffer the loss of our families or loved ones, or in our lives as we turn toward the truth of ourselves. And that's real. So already engaging that warrior spirit. Some of us have suffered deep injury and trauma around this, just to be walking in our authenticity. And yet, our family continues to strive for collective freedom, full citizenship, and inclusivity for all. So I just want to honor that. This is our charge, yes? Warriors. And much healing, much transformation in this work, just walking in these feet with these hearts. So it's the same on the path, this path of our practice. Warrior's work, warrior's heart. So the truth of what it is that we are doing, we are looking deeply, we are uncovering the truth of what's here. And it's not always easy. It's not always the easy work. Sometimes uncovering what it is that we are uncovering, what it is that's arising, whatever it is we're working with. Sometimes that means touching in to sorrow. And there's a deep sorrow. And I just want to acknowledge this. The deep, deep sorrow. We talk a lot about dukkha in this practice. Dukkha is the Pali word, Pali being the ancient language of the Buddha. It's the Pali word for discomfort, dissatisfactoriness, suffering, our unhappiness. It comes from all kinds of things. I could sit here naming many things that cause me dukkha throughout each day. We talk a lot about that. But do we really acknowledge the very real, resounding sorrow that is present? Present. It sits right here. You get down beneath everything. And I don't know if it is related to our love for the world and sorrow, if it's related to our longing for happiness, connection, But if we look deeply, we might see that it has come to us, this sorrow. It's come to us along generations. Along generations from the past to manifest here through our lives. We see ourselves as finite, but we are infinite. These harms, these injuries, this sorrow has come to us along generations. So, how do we work with it? How do we, what do we do with it? Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Zen master of our times, says that we are only truly alive when the mind is with the body. And so, he means engaging what is real, what is here. So turning toward being with, we spend a lot of time turning away from our suffering, from our discomfort. I know I do. Certainly, any difficulty arising in the body from past traumas, we don't want any part of that, right? When it comes up. Ooh. So difficulty being with suffering, being with the intensity of our pain, sorrow, moving through our trauma. This is pervasive. This is pervasive. Let me tell you, I talk to a lot of people. It's pervasive in our practice. It's pervasive in our society. In this practice, the convention has been that we sit and meet our difficulties, that we look deeply with compassion and kindness, yes, and that we tend to our challenges. We turn toward whatever is arising to see clearly, to find a clear path. Right? That's the idea. Most of the time, under many circumstances, this is the way, in the words of the great Mandalorian. Right? This is the way. But there's also an intense anxiety and discomfort that can come up for some of us, brought on by a traumatic experience. It just arises sometimes, it comes up. So what's interesting is that most of us have brushed up against or touched trauma in some way in our lives, whether personally or through someone close to us. Everybody, deep trauma is pervasive in today's societal system. So I want to acknowledge that. It's a truth. And some of us have been so deeply impacted by difficult events that mindfulness is hard. Mindfulness is difficult. How am I going to come in here and get intimate with this? Kind of difficult. Being with it or going to meet that pain or suffering or stuck energy can be triggering, activating, and sometimes for days. Right? We get activated. This is real, and we're thrown into the very real, physical, visceral sense of overwhelm. So this kind of trauma stays in our bodies, stays locked up in a sense in the nervous system. And it can just continue to arise again and again, reactivated. So anything but that, right? For those of us who have experience with this kind of energy that can arise. So we tend to close off. We contract and we close off from those parts of ourselves. We close off from trauma. We close off from these deep, locked up energies and emotions because it's difficult. It's hard. I'll go through that. So it's difficult being with sorrow. It's difficult being with suffering as well, with the intensity of our pain. But we want to move through it. Right? We want to move through our trauma. We want to come out the other side. We want to be free. We want to be happy. And yet, it's there. How do we fully embrace the fullness of our experience? It's a part of our experience. It's in the field. All of this, what's happening around us, shootings, Ukraine, all of this, it's the same harms are perpetuating. They come to us and they manifest. So it's in the field. You can't, we don't pluck it out like a weed. We learn to address it, and we are composting in this moment. We are transforming. There's another Zen monk who made a statement in the 60s. This is a Vietnamese monk. His name is Thich Quang Duc. And I just want to, it's kind of heavy, he made this statement with his life and with his being and with his body, and he self-immolated. I don't know if some folks may recall, there's an image, it's a famous image of a monk on fire in the street. So he did this for a couple of reasons. One was political. He did this to draw attention to protect Buddhism and to protect freedom of religion, freedom to practice in his country. And he also, from the regime that was in power at the time, and he also did this out of tradition. So there is a Buddhist tradition of taking on the suffering of others, taking on the karma of others, relieving the suffering of others by taking it on to yourself. And so this was also a part of his self-immolation. The Dalai Lama says, please do not practice this practice anymore. It is not useful. It is not helpful in our times. So it's said that he sat down in lotus position and poured gasoline on himself and then lit himself on fire. And it's said that he didn't cry out, that he sat chanting the sutras. And so when his body became, burned and charred and could no longer support itself, it collapsed over. And it's said that he reached out one arm while in flames and pushed himself back up and resumed chanting. sitting in the fire, touching the heart of suffering. This is the real deal, right? The real deal. This practice. We have the capacity. We have the capacity. So going deeply into the heart of suffering, it's difficult. It's painful. Yet the wonderful miracle of this pain and difficulty is that this is where compassion is born. Compassion lives in there. And what we're doing when we're getting in touch there is getting in touch with and holding a sorrow that is bigger than our own, bigger than us. And so a compassion grows as well that is bigger than our individual suffering. It's a compassion for the sorrow of humanity and for the sorrow of the world. And there's an intergenerational thread that carries with it a deep tenderness, the tenderness of our collective wounding. And so this wounding manifests in our lives from past generations, from past harms, because the karma from those harms is all around us. All around us. We're eating it. We are consuming it. We're ingesting it. We're watching it on TV. We scroll through it. And these harms are this moment permeating the fabric of our lives together here. This tapestry, this web of which we are all a part, and touching for each of us our core. This is a part of what it is to be human in this moment, in these times. So, when we are willing, when we are able, and we're not always able, we have to honor that. When we can open to it, when we get down beneath everything, we can see it, we can touch it, and we can finally feel it. The sorrow. It's powerful. It's deep. And if we are willing to open to it, it is there. And there's nothing more to do at that point but to weep. We weep. We allow ourselves to weep. And with compassion for the world. Compassion for the world. Your heart can hold that compassion. And we can actually stop identifying with it, with the stories that can bring us into that state of contraction, into overwhelm. In actuality, it's much bigger than we are. Much bigger than we are. So some of us may be working with addiction, all forms, whatever they are, maybe prone to anger or even violence at times. Each of us may be in touch with any manner of afflictions, but they have come to us through generations of harm. Suffering, sorrow. On a very deep level, these are not our own. They are not ours alone. Yes, we are working with them. As I mentioned, we are transforming. We are the vessel. Deep within, right here, the fires of transformation are burning. And so not ours alone. Drop the stories. Drop them. All this. And just open as much as you can to your real time, life flowing all around you. It's a powerful place. Open to sensations in the body, open to what is there for you. And if it's grief, Can you hold it as the grief of the world? Grief arising out of conditions of the world. We don't have to grab onto it as our own. And so, in touch with sorrow, in touch with compassion. Overflowing cup. Let me tell you. I'll have a poem. It's a poem entitled The Place Where We Are Right. Right isn't okay. It's by Yehuda Amichai. He says, from the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, a plow, and a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. So sometimes we need to allow the not okayness to come through. And this is our mulch. Our breast is the composting box. So allow it to come through. It's part of our experience. So, of course, in this life, we have moments and times of exquisite joy and happiness. This life is full with wondrous experience. Thich Nhat Hanh says the essence of our practice can be described as transforming suffering into happiness. So what's interesting is that happiness is a conditioned thing, meaning that it is also often fleeting, that it is impermanent. More from Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, we all want to be happy, and there are many books and teachers in the world that try to help people be happier, yet we all continue to suffer. Therefore, we may think that we're doing it wrong. Somehow we are failing at happiness, but that isn't true. Being able to enjoy happiness doesn't require that we have zero suffering. In fact, the art of happiness is also the art of suffering well. The art of suffering well. When we learn to acknowledge, embrace, and understand our suffering, we suffer much less. Not only that, but we're also able to go further and transform our suffering into understanding, compassion, and joy for ourselves and others. So he lays out 5 practices for nurturing happiness because we actually have to nurture our happiness. We have to tend to it. And I'll share these with you. I'll share these 5 practices. Let's see if I can go quickly here. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Screen sharing. Yay! Screen sharing deities are with us. 5 practices for nurturing happiness. So the first here is letting go. It's the first thing we do, just as in meditation. And Thai says there's a kind of joy that comes from letting go. So we can do this with our lines of thinking and repetitive thoughts. We can do this by just coming back to the body. Just as we just practice. We can do this in our day-to-day lives. We just let go. We must train ourselves. We gotta train ourselves. Don't follow the storylines. Be with the sensations, sometimes strong sensations of anxiety or fear, sadness. But if we let go of the storylines and go to the sensations in the body, something happens. And I invite you to investigate that. What happens when you let go and come into the body? Even in some of these more intense sensations. We can also let go in many other ways in life. It's a kind of renouncing. So we renounce many of the things we believe will bring us happiness. In reality just absolutely do not. And instead they bind us to suffering and unhappiness. So we learn to look deeply into our desires and attachments to discern what leads to suffering and what is supportive and helpful. And usually, upon seeing clearly, it's often that we just naturally let go. And so a greater sense of freedom and happiness is sure to follow. The next practice for cultivating happiness is inviting positive seeds. And so Tai says we each have many kinds of seeds lying deep in our consciousness. Those we water are the ones that sprout, come up into our awareness, and manifest outwardly. So nurturing what is positive. We can spend day in and day out mired in our suffering. I know sometimes I wake up and then I wallow. We can do that. We roll over again and again in despair. And so what grows? We must bend our attention to what is positive. We must bend our attention to what is positive. We let go, and then we replace that impulse that likely leads to more suffering with something positive, beneficial, supportive. I like gratitude. Gratitude practice is good. And it's wonderful in all kinds of moments, just as we did at the end of our meditation. And even with a live person, it like amplifies like by 10. Like just text some gratitude, email some gratitude, and better yet, express some gratitude, and it stays with you. So this is a wonderful thing. The third practice is mindfulness-based joy. And Tai says mindfulness helps us not only to get in touch with suffering so that we can embrace and transform it, but also to touch the wonders of life, including our own body. Then breathing in becomes a delight, and breathing out can also be a delight. So with mindfulness, we can open to the conditions that are all around us that are already supporting our happiness. We can open to the here and now, where we actually have choice, and where we can engage with aliveness. And we really can begin to discharge and leave some of our old patterns behind. It's very helpful. Just this practice of understanding the ruts and the grooves, and releasing and coming back to what is real-time engagement. We can do whatever it is we like. We can bend the mind in any direction. The fourth is concentration. Concentration is born from mindfulness, says Tai. Concentration has the power to break through, to burn away the afflictions that make you suffer, and to allow joy and happiness to come in. So there are a lot of things that arise around us, that will continue to arise around us in our lives, that are just waiting, just ready to take us away from this moment, right back into our habitual patterns. And so mindfulness leads to a deeper concentration, and concentration helps to stabilize us in the here and now, so that we don't get so caught up in that which has happened and that which might happen, and we can more skillfully acknowledge our concerns when they arise and just return to what is real. Right? So concentration helps to keep us rooted in our real-time experience. And the fifth practice is insight. And so Tai says with mindfulness, we recognize the tension in our body, and we want very much to release it, but sometimes we can't. What we need is some insight. And so with our mindfulness and concentration, we can look deeply into things and uncover what is needed and what is helpful and what is beneficial. I can do this. I use this. Sometimes anxiety will arise. And this happened with an experience not too long ago. I noticed anxiety in my body. I was like, oh, what is this? What's happening? And I noticed that I was having some aversion. So I was using my mindfulness, looking into, so what is this aversion? And I realized I was averse to some strong desire that I was having. I did not want to be having it. So maybe a not so healthful behavior or pattern of mine. And I was having this desire and I didn't want to be having it. So it manifests as anxiety. And so looking deeply there at the desire itself, I discerned that the desire was around some deeper need. So what was the deeper need? And then I could make a choice, a decision on how to nurture, how to nourish, how to be supportive of that deeper need. So we can do this. This is insight. So I'm coming close to the end. And I want to read to you. So looking into the heart of sorrow can lead to an overflowing compassion. And it's a compassion that is greater than ourselves. And we can also have freedom from identifying with kind attention. We can cultivate more happiness and aliveness and joy. So I want to read to you. This is an excerpt from Jack Kornfield and Joseph Goldstein. They had put together, Seeking the Heart of Wisdom. It's nice. They have a little portion in here where they speak about this. For genuine compassion to arise, it is necessary to reverse the conditioned tendency of avoidance and to open-heartedly experience the full range of our human condition. And then a beautiful expression of this possibility is found in the poetry of Ryokan. So Ryokan is a wandering monk, a Zen monk, who was alive in the mid-18th century. And so he's a poet. And if you have a chance, pick up anything. There's many, many collections of his work. But it's said that he captures the essence of both the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows and just being open. It's an open flow of life. And so I'll read you some of his poetry here in this collection. Ryokan says, once again the children and I are fighting a battle using spring grasses. Now advancing, now retreating, each time with more refinement. Twilight. Everyone has returned home. The bright round moon helps me to endure the loneliness. The autumn nights have lengthened, and the cold has begun to penetrate my mattress. My 60th year is near. Yet there is no one to take pity on this weak, old body. The rain has finally stopped. Now just a thin stream trickles from the roof. All night the incessant cry of insects. Wide awake, unable to sleep. Leaning on my pillow, I'll watch the pure, bright rays of sunrise. Oh, that my robes we're wide enough to gather all the suffering people in this floating world. So, I'll stop there. It brings us to the end of our time. So let's sit together and I'll offer merit. So once again, allowing the eyes to close if that feels good. Just bringing the attention to this moment. Allowing what's been shared to settle. Noticing the energy in the body. And so, with gratitude and any benefit, any insights, any form of connection, any form of refuge, any goodness, may we carry them in our hearts, may we carry them in our lives and our footsteps as we walk, as we engage, as we connect with one another. May they manifest in our relationships, manifest in our work that we do in the world, in all that we create. May they ripple out in all directions, reaching all beings everywhere, all realms. May all beings walk in peace. May all beings experience joy and contentment. May all beings find freedom. That, I thank you for your practice. I love seeing you. Please walk, enjoy, walk in truth, and I look forward to seeing you next time.